Why would a Pakistani Muslim who grew up in Bronx, New York, become a Christian? How has her life been transformed by Jesus, and what does it cost her personally and professionally? Our guest today is Aisha Borden, and she has an incredible story to tell.
I was taught to lie. The next thing I noticed were scars on the wrists. The Lord showed me a vision of a white road. I didn't know where I stood, but I definitely knew that Jesus is the truth.
Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. It is an honor, and just excited to share what God has done and is continuing to do.
Well, we're going to really unpack your story, which is incredible on so many levels. But in many ways, it seems to start with your dad, who was born in Pakistan into a Muslim family. Maybe tell us about his life growing up, his family, who he was, and then we'll get to your story coming out of that.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, my dad grew up, like you said, in Pakistan, Lahore, actually, specifically, and he grew up in a very military dense home. So his father was one of the trade officers between India and Pakistan. And even before that, my grandmother was born in India and migrated to Pakistan because of the apartheid and because they're Muslims, and with that, they traveled all over the country because of his job. And my dad is the first after 6 sisters and first son and 2 other sons. So big family, very big family.
Okay, so what is the significance of being the first son, either from Pakistan or just in the Muslim tradition?
Yeah, well, in the whole Middle East tradition, men are considered obviously the head of the household, but a first son, you're passing down the seed to your family lineage. So you're just considered a king. There's a hierarchy involved. So even for me, I am the first daughter of the first son, and I even have a title named Baji in my immediate household and my extended family. I have more authority because of my birthright of my lineage. So when I tell someone to do something, like just growing up, they would listen, whether they were older than me or much younger than me, because of who I was born to. And my dad, his sisters would tell me stories that everything was given to him up until he was 2 years old. He didn't really do anything to get anything. So he just was treated like a king. First son after so many daughters. And it's still very much the same mentality of just men being more prized than the women.
Okay. Do you have a sense of how far back the Muslim tradition goes in your family?
I do not even know that. I just know that my grandmother was married off before she was 10. And married my grandpa. Yeah.
So I think I'm tracking. When you say married off, this would have been your great-grandparents decided before she was 10 she was going to get married, or she actually got married before she was 10?
She got married at 9 years old.
Wow.
And had babies all her life. Yeah.
Okay, so as far as you're aware, the Muslim tradition goes back far in your family, and there's no Christians or others that you've heard of, but your dad was born in Pakistan. He moves before he was married. So you were born somewhere in America, in New York. Is that true?
Yes. And in New York. Yes. That's where he met my mother.
Okay. Gotcha. So let's talk a little bit about what your family was like growing up. Let me take a step back. Why did he come to America, and what job did he do when he came here? It sounds like he had a pretty good influential position in Pakistan.
He did. My grandpa was very, very well off. They have multiple homes out there still to this day, big family. And he knew some of his siblings were already in the States. So he moved out here to make a name for himself. And he said, if I can't make it here, I'll come back and marry whoever you want me to marry. Because he was given, multiple options and you can marry multiple women in Islam. So he was given that. It was a backup option.
Hmm.
And in the midst of that, he met my mom. So as far as like what he started doing professionally, whatever he could do, from washing dishes to being a chef, like all in between, to make it in the United States. So yeah, he became an entrepreneur essentially.
Oh wow, that's really interesting. So he met your mom. Tell me a little about your mom and her background.
Yeah, very opposite as far as the Pakistani lifestyle. And my mother was born of Puerto Rican descent. So my grandmother was born in Puerto Rico, and I know her parents were born in Spain. So when
Wow.
the migration happened with the slave trade, that kind of developed that certain lineage. So it's African and Spaniard. So my back on my mom's side, they were slaves from just like 2, 3 generations,
Mm.
and migrated to the New York City. So
Now, your mom's background would not have been Islamic then. Was she culturally Catholic? What was her background?
yeah, so she grew up Catholic, and it was very traditional Catholic. I want to say more on the Santeria side of things because
Mm.
of the idolatry going on. And
Mm.
I mean, my grandmother, she's with the Lord now, but she prayed to the saints and she still had a relationship with Jesus. She loved Jesus very much. And when my parents initially met, my mom didn't really have any hold in that the culture of Catholicism, so she did convert, but her background itself was complete opposite. My dad grew up really well off and wealthy. My mother grew up poor
Oh.
in the Bronx. So when she met my dad, it was a very stark, different lifestyle of having, different exposed to different culture, different type of foods and all kinds of things. So I mean, from my understanding, I just know my mother just knew she was going to have security while being with my dad. And like her side of the family, they were okay with her being with a man, that didn't look like her and had a completely different religion. So, but I'm not sure of her real core beliefs of wanting to say that she grew up like really invested in her Catholic beliefs, mainly because she did convert to Islam.
Mm. So, gosh, I have so many questions for you. This is interesting, but maybe jump ahead to what your life was like growing up. So it's a Muslim family. Would you say it was
Mhm.
culturally Muslim? How serious did your dad and your mom take their faith?
I would say nominally Muslim growing
Mm.
up, but when we got older, and I started causing problems in the home, it became very radical,
Okay,
very radical.
when you say causing problems, are we jumping ahead to when you started believing in Jesus? Okay, that
Yeah,
makes sense. That's interesting. I'll hold that thought because we're gonna get there and cover that story. So you guys
yeah.
were really more culturally Muslim than anything else. Did you dress differently at school? Did they just let you dress like people did in that era in the Bronx?
Well, we moved down to Northern Virginia when we started kindergarten. So my dad's side of the family, most of his siblings had moved down here, where I still live here in Northern Virginia near my family still. But so I grew up in Woodbridge, Virginia specifically, and it's very multicultural and diverse, like still to
Mm.
this day, very much like New York. So I've been around so many cultures and backgrounds, thoughts, way people look, like multiracial couples. It's been always a thing growing up in the area I live in. So it didn't feel weird, mainly being biracial, right? I didn't
Mm.
have this idea of, okay, I'm this and this. It was just, I'm a person. And that's how my parents raised us. But as I got a little bit older, you could see people act a certain way. But on the flip side, really, I have a twin sister. So her and I would be together like all the time. And it's funny because she looks Puerto Rican and I
Oh,
look more Indian. So
that is
um,
interesting.
it's very cool. People don't believe we're related because we don't look at all like we're related. We look
Okay.
complete opposite. So,
Mm.
I mean, just basically like in the home, it was very strictly traditionally Muslim. But when I would go out into school, public school, I grew up in a public school. It was very like, yeah, we're cool, but it was very strict in the home. So we weren't allowed to date. We weren't allowed to really
Mm.
have friends that were guys, you know. It was hard because went to a public school, so it was kind of hard not to be exposed to so many different people. And it really caused, I want to say, like a stream of rebellion really early on because I didn't really want to do the things my parents wanted me to do. And I mean, I was good academically, took pre-college courses in middle school, like super smart, but the home life was very toxic, very toxic. And I knew it was toxic from as long as I
Mm.
can remember, being very toxic because of how my dad, his mindset about controlling the home, the atmosphere, and his rules.
No, I don't want to push beyond where you're comfortable, but using a word toxic, that's like a trigger word. Do you
Yeah,
mind unpacking what that meant and what that looked like?
absolutely. I want to expose it, right? I have no problem because it this is a serious issue with the culture of control. It's a very serious, serious issue of control. And it's more of my way or no other way, and no tangible explanation to explain to, like, for an example, for a rule, like, why can't I have friends that are guys? I know why, because they don't want me to fall into sin. They don't want me to fall into, having kids before marriage, like all these different things that I knew was it made sense. And it makes sense, like, absolutely. However, I don't go to a girls' school, so how is it
Mm.
possible for me not to congregate with other people that are not that are male, right? And it caused a real root of me not being able to communicate good with men for a long time. And it was really a disservice because there was no explanation. For example, there was a rule my dad had. My sister and I, we grew up singing in choir. That was our extracurricular activity. And we did that together. And one time we had a tour with our high school or middle school group, and it was out of state in New York, out of all places, where family could meet us. And my dad said, no. In the Quran, it says you cannot travel out of state to do extracurricular activities. It says it. So those are the type of rules I was just smacked with all the time. And I questioned all of those things in my mind because I couldn't question it outwardly because you would, no, how dare you question my authority, right?
Mm.
It's just the way it is. So, very, very uncomfortable home life, mainly because it felt
Mm.
like I was walking in eggshells every day.
Mm.
And whatever mood my dad was in, everybody had to be in. He was in a good mood, everyone's good. If he comes home in the bad mood, everyone's just waiting to make sure we don't trigger him even more. And unfortunately, he had his vices of alcohol and drugs and
Mm.
pornography. So that was a real that was very known in our home. Like my
Mm.
brother, our brother, younger brother, my mom and my sister, we knew my dad had those vices, and we didn't have any of those things, right? We didn't have any way to express the pain that we were going through other than each other. So it was very chaotic in our home. And if something was put on the table incorrectly in a certain way, then we'd get slapped. And
Oh.
my mother would just sit and just watch this abuse go on because I know he was abusive towards our mother because we tried to leave multiple times all throughout my whole life growing up. We tried to leave, run away, never happened until I did eventually, right? But it was a pattern of not feeling safe in my home.
Thanks for sharing that. So sorry you had to go through
Yeah.
that. It's heartbreaking just to hear. Looking back, do you attribute some of that control and that abuse to just the person that your dad was? Because there's plenty of Christians who will cite Bible verses and control and take stuff out of context. Or do you look at it and say it's the person he was, and there's something within Islam that lends itself to that kind of control? How do you see it?
Absolutely. It's first spiritual, right? First spiritual. It's first spiritual. So my dad, grew up being told you're a man, you have everything you need to your disposal, maids coming in and taking care of him. Like that was just the lifestyle my dad grew up with, but also the authority in Islam. Like if there are surahs that say you can lie to make yourself look good for the sake of other people, like, and not even taking heed to other people's character. Your character is more important than someone else's character. So you can lie, you can fib, you can cheat people to make sure you go up the ladder, or you look good, you save face. So unfortunately, I was taught to lie. I was taught to lie. I was taught to pretend to be happy. I was taught to pretend to really bottle up my emotions and not really express myself, because if I did, it wasn't encouraged. It was never encouraged to even say, how was your day? Like, how are you feeling today? None of that was, there was no emotional connection. And then the spiritual aspect of it was my dad is God. And in a lot of terms, it was my dad being the God of the home. And if I were to question anything about Islam, he would tell me, you're crazy, go read the Quran and they'll find your answers in the Quran. And I'm like, I don't speak Arabic. I can read an English translation, but there wasn't really any comprehension in the questions I was relaying to my dad, because I'm like, why do we do what we do? Other than it being culture, there wasn't any explanation. So very much a power trip, and just being the authority because of being the man in the home. And but he definitely dictated a lot of our conversations and what we did, monitored everything. But I know there's definitely a spirit of just control and narcissism, and many as well. Yeah.
Now, it's in high school, as I understand it, that you really start to have questions and see things differently. But before that time, say junior high or maybe the start of high school, would you have said, yeah, I'm a Muslim, I believe this? Looking back, do you think you ever really believed it?
I did believe it, but I didn't understand it all.
Okay.
So with that, I didn't wear the hijab growing up. I wore the hijab when we went to the mosque. It was like twice a year, but family members would host prayers we'd go to. So our whole family, like a lot of our family is in Northern Virginia. We'd get together, I kid you not, every week, if not every other week, something like a birthday or a prayer or something. So we'd always be around. And unfortunately with that, we weren't able to share our feelings. We weren't able to share, what we're going through in our home, because I know other people were going through stuff too. But, the culture, unfortunately, is you share everything in the home. In the Latin culture and in the Middle Eastern culture is the same. You keep everything in the family, but if you keep everything in the family, nothing changes. So that's why I'm here to share what has happened and what I pray to happen in the future.
So just a few more questions before we get to where your life started to turn upside down. Did you have Christian friends at all before this time? Like, what was that like? How did you view them? Do you view them as heretics, or just they're friends and they just see the world differently?
I would say I respected them because my parents, told us, we believe in the Bible, but we don't believe that Jesus died, and we believe that Jesus is a prophet. So we respect him. We respect what he did. We respect he did heal people, and he is going to come back and judge the world with Muhammad, with Abraham, with Isaac, with Ishmael, all these people, Mary, and we had Christian neighbors for a long time growing up. Yeah, it was cool just because they were more open. Their home felt way different than my home. I could definitely feel a difference. There was a freedom. It was just air. The air was clear in their home, and I could tell they genuinely enjoyed each other's company. They weren't just living in a home together because they're a family, but they actually enjoyed each other's company. And we loved hanging out with the kids. There were a few girls that were closer to my sister, our age, and another younger boy that was born later, closer to my brother too. So they lived. I think they lived next to us. They were literally touching our gate. So our gate was touching each other, or the land, and we hung out with each other almost every day. And they brought us to church, I want to say one time for
Oh.
a VBS. Yeah. And it was just one day, and they had, like, I just remember them singing songs and reading scripture. They had me read something, but it wasn't like, I'm curious about this, but I just knew that it was different. I knew that it felt lighter than the
Mm.
home life that I had
Mm.
in my bedroom, right, in my living room, and just it just felt so different. Just like reflecting back, and I'm still in touch with some of those people, the family, and it's just so cool to they know now I love Jesus. And Brenda, she was telling me, I was praying for y'all, I was praying for you guys, and
Mm.
I said just keep praying because they need the Lord and they
Mm.
need to be set free, right? But they loved my family. I could tell that they enjoyed our company. And as far as like still growing up in public school, I was exposed to all types of religions. And even our like small like little group of people in high school, there was a Nepali guy, there was an Indian dude,
Mm.
Pakistani guy, a white girl, all types of people. And then me and Asia, we were like the mixture as well. So we were just everything was accounted for in in our group. So I was just exposed to all that all the time. And I thought I enjoyed that. I enjoyed those kind of conversations.
You hinted at this a little bit earlier, but did you ever just have questions about Islam or the Quran that didn't make sense that you asked about? And how were those received from your dad or any mom or anybody else?
Absolutely. So I remember one day, I think I know I was in elementary school. I want to say I was like maybe 6, very, very young. And I asked my dad, why are we here?
Hmm.
Why are we here? It was a profound question coming from a 6-year old, you know, but I'm a thinker, so it makes sense. And I'm a creative, so it just makes sense that your eyes are just so in awe of this world, but you're just like, why am I here? Like I see what's around me, and I knew that everything around me is worshiping God, but what am I here for? And I mean, I asked my dad multiple times, and he would look at me like I'm crazy and say, go read the Quran, go find all your
Hmm.
answers in there. There wasn't a sit down, right? Okay, you're having these questions. Let's actually talk about this. There
Hmm.
wasn't dialogue, right? There
Hmm.
is no vulnerability. There's no like I said, emotional connection to these questions. Because I think everybody goes through those questions and any multiple times
Sure.
in their life. Like, what's my purpose? Like, why am I here? And that's a valid question to ask, right? Everybody has a purpose, and no one's a mistake. So there's a reason why you're here on this earth for the purpose that God's put on. He wrote it on in heaven. He had it all planned out for you to walk in your purpose. So I just didn't know what mine was, other than this is what my purpose, I thought my purpose was marriage. You're gonna get married, and the cycle will just repeat. So it was not good enough for me. And I think as I grew a lot older, I just didn't want to identify myself as a Muslim just because of the lifestyle, and then the what the Quran said, and then what the world had displayed. It was very hypocritical to what my dad was expecting of us, and then what the world was expecting of us, and then what I expected of myself. I didn't really know how to like bridge all that together to make my own choices mentally. Or I mean, I could think of things, but I couldn't execute it. So it was very, very confusing just growing up, saying I believe, but I really didn't.
Hmm. You described earlier kind of the toxic nature of your home, and your dad had certain outlets. I mean, how did you deal with this as you got into your teenage years? What was that? How did it affect you just mentally and emotionally? How did you deal with that or not deal with that?
Music.
Okay, okay.
Very
Mm.
big deal. Still to this day, I love to sing and use what this gift God's given me. Music has always been my friend. And
Mm.
I grew up in the 2000s, like 80s, 90s, 2000s, and the punk rock scene, right? Like that was when music was good.
Amen. Preach it.
Music is trash now. It's so bad. Um, I grew up with I gotta say it, My Chemical Romance, like Guns N' Roses, the Ramones, like all those like punk rock bands were my jam. And I mean, now I don't even listen to that stuff. I have no desire to listen to it, right? I have zero desire for any of that music.
Mm.
However, if I listen to a song, it'll come back, right? But what it really did for me, brother, was help me actually feel what it was feeling inside. It helped me
Mm.
like emotionally just bring it out to the open. When I would listen to a song that talked about depression, or I would listen to a song that just talked about the pain about heartache, or pain about rejection, or pain about just not liking who you are, or wanting to love somebody and you couldn't love them, and all these like different things of just feeling trapped. And those songs, those bands became my friend in like so much sense of the way. And as I got more darker in my music, like more screamo and punk, and I would have posters all over my wall. At one point I had posters all over my wall of all the bands I loved. And my dad clicked one day and he said, you need to stop listening to this stuff. It's messing with your mind and you need to take everything down. So he forced me one day. That was such a sad day, because that was my room, my own bedroom, to express who I am. And it was literally torn apart,
Mm.
and it caused my depression to get worse.
Mm.
So that kind of tipped me to a darker side mentally,
Mm.
really. Yeah.
I could see that. That makes sense. So you're at the spot, things are dark, you have questions, not looking forward to the future that you expected in your family and in your faith at that time. What was the first
Mhm.
moment where you thought maybe Islam is not true and you entertained Christianity? What took place?
I don't think I ever entertained Christianity until
Hmm.
I had an encounter with God,
Okay.
with the Lord. So really, it wasn't a thing. It wasn't, okay, I need to change what I believe. I just knew there was a God. I just didn't know who, right? I didn't feel like I had a dialogue or being heard by God because of all the rituals, with Islam, like washing and praying a certain time and praying literally in a language that I don't understand. So that was just even growing a more distance between Allah and me, and not really feeling like I can come up to the place of having an answer or having an intimate dialogue with who made me. So it just made me feel really cold.
Mm. How old were you?
I want to say my whole upbringing, I felt that way, that I was just distant, because you have all these expectations of what you do, and the mindset as well. Like, you want to be a good kid growing up, and you want to make sure you
Yeah.
represent your family right. I mean, I never really caused problems growing up. It wasn't like I was rebellious in a sense that I wanted to shame my family. It was just want to be a kid. I literally just want to go and be a child.
Mm.
I wasn't allowed to do that. It was very sheltered, and most of the time I felt like even my thoughts were controlled because of the grip of just darkness in my home, and it was just there was no escape. There was really no escape.
So how old were you when you had this experience, and what kind of experience are you talking about?
The best moment of my life,
Mm,
to be honest. I know like when I was in elementary school, I did tell my parents that I felt suicidal and I had
mm,
been feeling like that for a number of years,
mm.
mainly because of the chaos in the home. We had everything we needed, but again, the emotional instability was just too much. And I took my parents aside and I said, something's going on in my mind. I don't want to live. I feel like I want to die. And they looked at me and was like, why? You have everything you need. You know, you're not lacking anything. If you need something or you want something, we'll give it to you, like, no problem. But I said, I really don't feel like I want to be here at all. And I was probably like 9, like really, really young when I
Wow.
had that conversation. So, and I think I want to say that's when I first verbally said that out loud to my parents.
So tell me about this experience. I think you're in high school where it just transformed you. What was that experience where you really encountered God?
Yeah, I want to say I try to like say I was at 12, mainly because like middle school, because I know it was before 2000, September 11th. I know it was before
Mm.
that because things shifted so much
I'm
after
sure.
that day. So, and my maiden name used to be Hussein. So it was very intense having that name. And I was ready to get rid of that name quickly after that. But um, I know I was definitely in middle school during this time. And it was years after I had told my parents, hey, I'm suicidal. I don't want to be here. I don't know why I'm here, my purpose, all these questions popping up in my head. And at the time, I was still sharing a room with my sister. So we didn't, at one point, she moved downstairs and I stayed upstairs in our main bedroom that we shared. And we were still sharing a room. And I remember just laying in bed, right, just not being able to sleep. And I remember my mother would tell us, if you can't sleep at night, talk to God.
Mm.
He's up all night anyways. And I'm like, that's, I mean, Muslims don't say that.
Yeah.
That's nothing close to what a Muslim would say. You don't dialogue with Allah. You just pray, and you recite surahs. Like that's it. There's a moment of freedom when you're finishing your prayer to open up more of your, requests during prayer. But that's just a short time. But there's no real like, let's talk and communicate and what do you think of this? And can I do this? As far as creator and creation. And I had one like just couldn't sleep, right? And I had my first dialogue with God, but I didn't even really know who I was talking to.
Mm.
But the first thing I said was, I hate you. I hate you.
Mm.
I genuinely felt that way because of the distance, the
Mm.
coldness, and even the reflection my dad gave me when it came to Islam, right? About the religion, about the culture and all that. It was just so cold and very opposite to my mother's side, very bubbly and open and very charismatic and very touchy feely and all about the feelings. And I just said, I don't understand why I'm here. I know I'm meant to worship you, but I don't know who you are. So, how do I worship you?
Mm.
And I'm thankful I've had that mindset my whole life because I just knew this world is so beautiful, but then there's still so much corruption going on inside your own heart, right? And I never understood why. Why is there so much beauty and then there's so much messiness in my own self? So with that, I just started honestly having a conversation with, I don't know who was hearing me, because I just needed to vent. And at some point I said, I don't know who you are, but I hate you. You're not answering my prayers. I'm trying to pray for my family to get better. I want my parents' relationship to get better. I want them to really show affection toward each other, and me and my brother and my sister. We fight all the time. We're fighting all the time. There's no peace in my home, and I feel so controlled, and it's not fair. And I'm trying my best. I'm trying my best, right? To be a good Muslim girl, to do all the things I'm supposed to do. And I just don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to just get married off, but I just want to actually live a life that has a purpose. And I said, if you're Muhammad, if you're Allah, if you're Jesus, if you're Mary, if you're Krishna, I went down, if you're Buddha, like I went down the line, and I said, whoever you are, show up.
Hmm.
Show up. That's a really bold question to say that to God.
Yes, it is. Well, keep going. So what happened then?
So I had a contemplation. So I said this: if you don't show up, my twin sister, is going to find me dead tomorrow, because I don't want to live.
Mm.
That was my contemplation. If you don't show up, then I'll just die and not feel any more pain, because I'm already in so much pain, right?
Mm.
To just not exist anymore. And I'll be better off anyways. Though my family will be fine. I will be way better off than being here. And out of that, I just got really tired. Just that conversation was so heavy. And the first really vulnerable conversation I had with anyone in my life. And I fell asleep. I fell into a very deep sleep because I experienced a dream. And in the dream, I realized I was in a white room, and it was expanding in all directions. And then I felt an emotion come over me of peace. And I had never experienced that before. In my psyche, in my mind, in my body, I felt no fear, no anxiety, no depression, none of that. I just felt good. That felt, wow, like a relief. And I'm looking ahead of me, and in front of me, there becomes a silhouette, becomes apparent. And again, I'm at peace. So I'm not scared. I'm not worried. I'm not, freaked out about what's happening. It just became more clear. And then I started seeing the cloak of the person in front of me. The cloak was white and flowy. It was really long and just like going everywhere. And then I saw arms opened up like this, right? And the next thing I noticed were scars on the wrists of the man in front of me. And I immediately knew it was Jesus. I immediately knew it was Jesus. And in my mind, he spoke to me, right? It was, I saw a beam of light coming before where his head was. And his hair was flowy and brown and so beautiful. I didn't see his face, but I saw a beam of light coming out of his face. And now I know that I heard the voice of God. I heard the Father, I heard Jesus and the Holy Spirit speak to me at that moment. And the Lord said, "Give me your heart, Aisha, and I will love you forever." I didn't feel like I had anything to give the Lord, because I felt like my heart was just crushed so many times. in my home life, in the world, my own mindset, my own mentality. And I just felt like it was just so broken. And he still saw whatever I had in me was enough for him to love me forever. The exchange of my heart to him. And that response was love, that agape love, like unconditional love, no matter what, like, I will love you. So he said, give me your heart and I will love you forever. And in my heart, I know I felt hesitant because it just felt like it didn't feel like it was enough for that type of response, right? Like me to give him this heart that's messed up, this heart that's so hurt, this heart that's been stomped on, this heart that's been abused, that's been neglected, a heart that's not heard, it's not poured into, it's just completely broken. And this broken heart, this broken mind and broken person, the exchange of me giving my brokenness to God, to the Lord, and his exchange was life forever. I never heard of that, right? I never heard of that even being an option. Um, and I woke up, right? And I went down to my knees and I said, Jesus, you are Lord. I believe. I believe. I give you everything. I give you my life. Not only my heart, I literally give my life to you because that love, I need it. I need that love. And then immediately, the Lord opened my eyes with supernatural understanding of the Bible. Literally from Genesis to Revelation, the Lord downloaded an understanding of what this beautiful love story has for the world. But he downloaded understanding of the gospel. He downloaded an understanding of how everything became, from Genesis and what is to happen in Revelation. And it was powerful. It was a powerful encounter. And then I started seeing in my own home a battle going on. I saw in the spirit, there were demons and angels fighting in my home. And it was multiple battles going on. There was a battle in my bedroom. There was a battle in the hallway. I could only see just in that top floor. And there's a battle in my parents' bedroom, right? There's a battle in my brother's bedroom. There was a battle in every room in my own home of angels and demons fighting toe to toe. And it made me understand why, like the chaos of what was going on in my home. It made me understand why. That is why there's an unsettling here. That's why there's an unsettling in the world. That's why there's an unsettling of evil and good. There's a fight between both of them. And I had a better understanding as to why everything was such a mess in my home life. So really, like, that changed everything. That changed everything. But it didn't really go anywhere after that, unfortunately.
Okay, so you're 12 years old when you have this first prayer to God. You basically say, I'm not going to live if something doesn't show up. You pray to Krishna, Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad. That night, dramatic dream, which, as you know, so many former Muslims I've talked to and read about, just dreams and visions from every country in the world that I've heard of, former Muslims. Somehow God just uses that to draw Muslims to Jesus. Very similar kind of message, similar all in white and the beauty description. So shows up, transformative to you. It's like your eyes are open to see spiritual forces taking place in your home, but you're only 12. Did you go to church? Did you go back to your life? Did you tell your parents? What happened next?
I kept it a secret. I was scary. It was so scary. Not the encounter itself, but the weight of it, right? It shook me to the core. It shook my foundation. It shook what am I supposed to do with this information? I don't even remember our Christian neighbors were living next door. So I really couldn't tell anybody. Really, I had no one to say anything to do, not even my own sister, my own twin, like couldn't share it. And I felt like if I did, it would just cause more problems in the home when it was already unstable. And really, I had to just put it in the back burner. Just knew I had an encounter, but I couldn't. Okay. I'm not a huge fan of the word process, right? Because you just receive it. But I didn't have anyone to talk to process what I just experienced. It happened, and my eyes are open, and then I thought it was crazy, right? Because there wasn't anyone to confirm and digest, and there was no church option for me. I mean, there were two churches in the neighborhood I grew up in. There are two churches in the entrance of the neighborhood, but I wouldn't even dare try
to go there.
Let me go there. Let me see what happens, right? Nope. So yeah, it didn't. Unfortunately, it was shoved really deep down in my psyche to kind of survive the home.
So let's understand you're understandable that you were 12 and these forces are going on. Take me to the point where you're like, okay, now I'm a believer. What happened there? And then after that, I want to talk about maybe what happened when you told some of your family.
I want to say it really wasn't until I actually did tell my parents what I experienced for me to really say, this is an option. This is definitely different than what I was taught. So I feel like my conversion happened in the midst of me debating about my beliefs and exposing what was going on in my heart. But there's a lot of details in that. I can't really say I had a definite moment that I'm like, okay, I'm a Christian right now, right?
Fair.
At that point.
Okay, so maybe tell us when you did tell your parents. I heard your interview with Mohammed Farity, and it sounds like it was pretty dramatic. I hate to have you enter back into that, but this is an important part of your story.
Yeah. I mean, honest, my brother, like, there's so much joy in this because God is good and I've been redeemed and I have nothing to hide. I have nothing to hide at all. Like, I'm free. I haven't lied in a long time, right? I've been living in truth. I'm like, I don't have to pretend. I don't have to debate or question. I can go straight to the Lord. So when before actually initially telling my parents, like what kind of led up to it was my parents found out I was dating a guy, and that's a big no-no. As I said, you don't date, you don't talk, but I was looking for affection. I was looking for a connection with somebody, and that rebellion just came about, and they found out about that relationship, and it really caused a standstill for my family to just pause. Okay, all our focus has to be on Aisha now. Like, we have to fix this situation because she's basically dishonoring our family. She's dishonoring us by being in this relationship.
How old are you, by the way, at this stage? How old are you? Like 16, 17 maybe?
Yeah, I want to say 17, 18. Okay. Like, I was in that relationship for a year. So like 16, 17, 18, like that time frame. And really young, right? And I knew it was going to come, right? I knew eventually, like, my parents will find out. But it really caused, like a standstill in my family. So one day, my dad was at work. My siblings were home with me, my brother, sister, and my mom. And they were just trying to figure out, what are we going to do with Aisha? She's a mess, right? She's just going crazy right now, and we need to fix her. So I didn't know what they were planning on thinking, but I just knew that I felt very vulnerable. I felt ashamed at the same time because I did lie to them. You know, there was shame involved. I didn't really want to lie. I just wanted to feel a little bit of freedom. I wanted to feel a little bit of making my own decisions, and I was taught how to lie, so I was able to do that. I was taught really well to hide stuff, and I was trained to do that. So I just kind of did what I was taught. So, like one day, my mom, we were in the basement, and my mom asked me, "So, is there any other secrets that you have that we can talk about?" And I said, "Actually, yeah, there's one other secret." And I shared with them everything I just shared regarding this amazing experience with the Lord. And I knew it was Jesus, right? Still at that moment, I knew it was Jesus. I knew that I didn't consider myself a Muslim, right? I knew I wasn't a Muslim. I knew I wasn't a Christian. Like, I didn't know where I stood, but I definitely knew that Jesus is the truth and is Lord, because of the supernatural, understanding that I received. And I told him that. I said, I experienced this dream when I was younger, and it changed my perspective on what was going on in our home. And I want to understand more of who Jesus is. That came out of my mouth. I was like, I want to understand more of who Jesus is. And my siblings are like shocked, right? And I openly just said, yeah, I know that Jesus is the truth, and I want to understand why he came to me. Why did he answer my question as far as who is God? If you're this, that, and that, and he showed up out of all of them, why? Right? And I wanted to know, why did he come to me? And why did he answer my prayer? And out of all these other options. So my brother, he got up and said, "You are no longer my sister. Aisha, I disconnect myself from you. Jesus is not Lord. You're crazy. I disown you." And he walked away. And then my sister came, which was even harder, actually, because of being my twin. She said, "You're crazy. Jesus is not Lord, and I don't want anything to do with you," and walked away. Right? And then my mom came up to me. She walked up to me and said, "Why didn't you tell us when this happened? Why? We could have helped you understand that Jesus is not Lord and that this was crazy. Like, no, we could have helped you. You're wrong." And I looked at her and I said, "You made a choice to leave Catholicism. You made that choice. Why can't I make that choice to leave what we believe in here as Islam and me follow Jesus?" Right?
Response.
You made that choice. So why can't I make my own choice? Why do I have to do what you tell me to do? Right? Or believe what you believe? Do you even know why you believe? Like, there's still questions I ask my mom, like, why do you believe in this and this and that? And there is no definite answer other than, oh, we were going to raise you Muslim, so I converted. Oh, I married your dad, so it was just easier for me to raise you guys Muslim for me to convert. Those are the only answers that I would get from her. And it just wasn't enough. It was just no meat to it. There's no passion behind it. There's no conviction, right? There's just, oh, is this expected of me, even though your dad would have married me even without converting? Because Muslims can marry women that are Christian and Jewish right? Because the seed of the child, of the
Mm.
father, goes straight to the kid. So whatever the kid is, they're Muslim. They're born Muslim. Similar in Judaism, you're born Jew. You're born as a Jew in a Jewish family. You're a Jewish. You're Jewish. So very similar, aspect. And I was just born into it, And I mean, that was the question I asked my mom. Like, you converted, why can't I? Right? And that got her heated. That got her heated. So then waited, which seemed like years, for my dad to come home. And I remember sitting in the living room, looking out on the street, just waiting, thinking, I'm gonna die tonight. My dad was gonna kill me. I'd rather just kill myself again. Like, just that mindset was coming through my brain again. Like, I just might as well just die because I have no idea what's going to happen tonight. Like, my siblings don't want to talk to me. My mom thinks I'm crazy too. I had nobody to lean on. I had nobody to lean on. And and the anxiety was just so tense because of them finding out about the relationship and then this kind of conversation, popping up after. It was extremely tense, very tense. So then I think this part is very, very important because, yeah, I believe this part is very, just as important as when I had that dream with the Lord. So we had a family meeting. Like, when my dad got home, and my mom went to talk to my dad in the bedroom, closed the door, and I knew they were talking about me. I'm like, I am the spectacle, right, of the family again, and it was just so overwhelming. And family meeting. All right, another family meeting about Aisha, and we're all sitting in the living room. My dad's standing, and he said, "You need to renounce Jesus. Jesus is not Lord. Jesus is not God. You're crazy. You need to renounce him." And I said, no. I said, no. I don't know why I believe that Jesus is the way. I don't know, understand all of why I had this experience. It's not my fault that I had this dream, but he came to me. Jesus came to me and showed up, and I responded. So I want to learn more about who he is. I'm not telling you I'm a Christian or a Muslim. Like, I'm not telling you I'm a Christian, but I just want to understand as to what I experienced and why. So he then pulled me to the ground in front of my siblings and my mom and started punching me and kicking me in front of them.
Mm.
And thankfully, that was the second time I heard the voice of the Lord in that moment. And he told me, what you're experiencing right now, I have.
Mm.
Whoa, yo. That gave me so much assurance that I was heard without even I was heard. He saw what I was going through. Like, I wasn't going through what I was going through in that moment, being physically hurt by my own father in front of my siblings and my mom and no one defending me. And he saw it and he was like, I'm right here. I'm right here with you. And he didn't stop my dad. My dad didn't just stop when I heard the Lord tell me this, right? Even though I wanted that to happen, he just kept punching me and pushing me and kicking me like, my face was messed up that day.
Mm.
And he eventually stopped because I said, okay, relax. I'm not a Christian, right? I said that just for him to stop hitting me, because he did not stop until I said, okay, I'm not a Christian. I can't say I definitely did not renounce Jesus, but I did say I'm not a Christian, and that caused him to stop. So that moment started my walk with the Lord. 100%. That started my, all right, Lord, you're speaking to me. You're hearing what I'm going, seeing what I'm going through, and you're responding to the pain that I'm experiencing right now. All right, you're real. You are real. And that started with just a lot of debates with my dad and I, verbal debates. They brought my mom to the home to try to think myself out of the situation and mindset about who Jesus is. And it was a very, very stressful season of my life. That was all in the same time. They were trying to marry me off. They said, we'll just marry you off so you're not thinking about Jesus all the time and you're not questioning your faith, you're not questioning your culture. We can just marry you off easily. Like my family, they're well off. They could have easily married me off within a couple days. I wouldn't be surprised, right? So they were like thinking of bringing suitors for me to choose from. And I'm like, what is happening right now?
Man.
Wild. And I just felt so trapped. I felt more trapped then than I did before. You know, because of the conversations, they would be getting so heated. We'd have family meetings and ooh, it was crazy. It was crazy.
You described feeling free now, but trapped then. Was there a stage where you finally just left and got out of there? What happened to finally move away from that situation?
That's a whole other conversation, right? To go into detail because of the secrecy and just the lies I had to continue to live in to survive from the confusion that my family saw. Like they saw, there's so much confusion between me and them. It was literally me versus them for a good number of months. And I just felt so detached from reality. I felt like this cannot be happening. This is like my worst nightmare. That person I was with broke up with me, and like now I feel like I'm totally alone, and I can't have no way to communicate with my friends. I have no way to really reach out for help. And one day I reached out to my best friend at the time, and she said, we'll just move in together. Like, we'll just go get an apartment and you can just move out. I'll get you and all this stuff. And I'm like, great, let's do it. I need to get out of here, right? And not just to like live my own life, but to feel safe. I didn't feel safe in my home. And I didn't know when I was going to get hit again. I didn't have any more privacy. Like my parents didn't let me close my door. They let me go to the bathroom, but my door was wide open. All from that point on, there was no privacy. I wasn't allowed to drive on my own. I wasn't allowed to go to the grocery store by myself. I wasn't given a phone. My phone was taken away from me. So I had no way to communicate with anybody as far as, you know, a way to escape. So one day my parents, they brought us into another family meeting, and my mom sat us all down, and she said, I have some very troubling news to share with you, very sad news to share with you guys. And I was relieved because I thought it was about me. I was like, okay, Whew. Thought it was about me, right? And before my mom started speaking, the Lord showed me a vision of a white road. It was icy, and there was a car that was totaled. I said, that's very interesting. Like, what does that mean, right? And immediately my mother said, unfortunately, your friend Victoria just died in a car accident on her birthday. And she flew out of the window of the car on an icy road. I was like, God braced me for that moment. That was my best friend that we were planning on living together, right? We were planning on starting a life, outside of our abusive homes, outside of our toxic families, outside of the expectations of acting a certain way and dressing a certain way, and you know um, being able to be free. And that bridge was burned completely. And that moment, I just sat back and I said, okay, Lord, I tried in my own physical way to make an escape plan. Like, I reached out to her, and now she's gone. I have no one to believe me. First of all, no one will believe me, and no one would be willing to reach out to me or know what's going on. You have to help me get out. You have to make the plan. It's all I literally gave it to him, and I said, I can't live here anymore, not only because of my faith and this growing desire for you, but I physically can't live here because of the abuse. I physically can't communicate with my family because they're not willing to communicate with me in a a civil way
Sure.
because of the stress. That was completely like just raveling over and over. It was another threat. Okay, we're going to do this instead. If you're going to do this, we're going to put this barrier. If you're going to do this, we're going to do this instead. Making things a little bit more tighter and uncomfortable for me to not even want to be there. So really, that started my journey to actually leave my house. And long story short, really, that's like its own like whole thing,
Sure.
right? But we went to my cousin, my best friend's funeral, right? And we went to the church, and I felt that peace that I felt in that dream again. So that solidified even more. All right, I'm going in the right direction. This is something that I need to put more attention on, right? And ooh, that was another confirmation of what I knew was wrong, right? The culture and the upbringing and the mindset. So I met some Christian missionaries at George Mason University. I was a student there, and long story short, they helped me leave. They met up with me like every week. The first day I met them, I told them what was going on in the home as far as the abuse, as far as the confusion in my heart, and just being in so much pain, and not really understanding who Jesus is. So they started to disciple me, and they started to teach me how to read the Bible. They taught me how to pray. They taught me the spiritual battle that was going on in my home, like understanding that this is not just your parents doing this to you, it's the devil doing this to you. The devil has caused your family to grow cold towards God, and they don't know him intimately. That's why they act the way they act. That's why they treat you the way they treat you. That's why they're in, such upheaval, because you're going against what they believe in. And really, they were my safe haven. Like, those two guys were my dudes. I call them my dudes. And, they gave me this Bible that I have to this day. This is my best friend. This is my best friend. They gave this to me on March 30th of 2009. They gave this Bible to me. And I told them when they gave it to me, I said, I'm not going to open this Bible until I leave my house. I promise you I will never open this until I leave my home, because I didn't want my parents to find this Bible or see me reading it, because up until that point, I was secretly reading the Bible in my home. I was secretly reading it at night, under the covers. It was so stressful to even read the Word of God, and it was just so painful to hide it, right? And I said, I didn't want to go through that stress to open this beautiful gift that you've given me. And I just kept it hidden and did not open it until the day I left on April 17th of 2009. I
Oh.
packed my bags.
Mm.
I skipped an exam, drove back to home from campus, and had two other friends that knew what was going on in detail in my bedroom packing my stuff up.
Amazing.
The house was empty, right? And I I went through every room in my parents' house and indirectly said goodbye to each of them. And I said, I'll never come here again. I'm leaving. I'm never looking back. I left a note on my dad's counter and signed it. And I left it all behind. And I said, I don't want anything to do with this family that's been hurting me. I don't want anything to do with Islam. I don't want anything to do with anything. Because at that point, I knew Jesus is Lord. I knew that I was following the truth, the way, and knowing that I have life in me because of Him, right? And I had that boldness to do that. But that was one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make. But
Understandably.
yeah, so I was
Sure.
18, I was 19 at the time. I had just turned 19 at the time when I ran away from home
Mm.
in Northern Virginia. So not in the Middle East,
No.
in Northern Virginia.
Well, Aisha, man, there's so many questions I have for you. And I know you're working on a book where you're going to tell this story in some depth. Maybe when that's out, we can come back. And this is kind of like part
Yeah.
2. You escape. What does life look like for the past 15 years? But maybe one question, before I wrap up, I know people want to know, are you back in touch with your family? Have any of them come to believe?
I am in touch with my family, thankfully. When I graduated college, I reconnected with them because I wanted them at my graduation.
Hmm.
That was one of the main reasons. And we've been growing a friendship and relationship. I do see my sister on a monthly basis after
Good.
getting married 7 years ago now, that I made a promise to her and I said, we need to build this friendship and relationship. I'm getting
Good for
married
you.
now, so things are going to change, but we need to make sure we are connected. So we are close, right? My brother and I are close. They still live, my siblings still live with my parents in my home that I grew up
Hmm.
in Woodbridge. So they still live not far from us. And I, talk to my dad on a regular basis on the phone and, my mom too. However, there's no depth in our relationships.
Hmm.
So the conversations are very basic and surface level, right? Like, I'm not even sure what to talk about. I can't really share, oh, God revealed this to me.
Yeah.
And I read this or I watched a podcast, like I ran into you, a couple
Hmm.
weeks ago, and how much I would just share, I would love to share these conversations to them, right? I can't. That's why I'm here sharing so that eventually they will be able to listen and hear the truth, right? Because I've told them the gospel, I've shown them the gospel. Like, my husband and I are married and we share the gospel. Like, we host things in our home so that they can be in the presence of the Lord. And as I'm led, I have to be led to talk to my family. There are moments I've gone through seasons that I just disconnect from them because, quite frankly, it's very toxic still, right? And I have to be led by the Lord because my flesh would be like, I will be with them every day. And if it was my flesh, I would be with them every day, hanging out with them, sharing the gospel. But then I get hurt over and over again, even seeing them to this day. Like, they still verbally, accuse me. They verbally still say I'm,
Yeah.
wrong. It's a one-way conversation. So it's very painful still, but they love my husband, Tony. They love my in-laws, my whole
Good.
family. Like, we all love each other, and we're still praying for them. there is a praise that I can share that, especially since my interview with Muhammad, is that Tony's sister, he has two sisters, and they both have given their life to the Lord. But I want to say one of them, she's taken her faith. I shared the gospel with her last summer, and I baptized her in the fall.
Incredible.
And now we're walking the Lord together. And she is my best friend because we are sisters in Christ, right? And we are vulnerable with each other. And now we're both praying for our family together. We're both getting together every week to read the word, getting together in person to intercede for our family. And our family thinks we're crazy. They think we're insane, right? But the fact that we can grow together, I tell her, you're my best friend. Like my twin sister, I can only talk so much about who I am with her,
Sure.
but deep, right, of the things of God and the things of what he's showing us and how he's moving in the world despite what it looks like. He is good and he's faithful, even when I'm not faithful, because I know I fail every day. I fail every day, whether in the mind or my own choices, but he is always consistent to reach out and be available when I do need him. That's relationship with the Lord. And we're looking forward to baptizing her husband this coming in next couple of days. So our family,
Incredible.
it's amazing. And my aunt on my mom's side, so my mother's sister, also gave her life to Jesus a couple of years ago, and it was because of me leaving my house that she was convicted years before and said, you're the reason why I know Jesus, and because your boldness to leave the way you left and you standing firm in your faith has caused me to really think things through. And now she's walking with the Lord too.
Oh my goodness, that is so thrilling that even since your interview with Mohammed Farity, interviewed him here as well for folks wondering context, that's happened.
Yeah.
I know this is just in many ways the start of your story. Feels like it's been 15 years plus, even further if we go back to when you were 12. But I suspect there's going to be a lot more miracles and wonderful things God's going to work through you with your family and friends and your ministry and beyond. So I pray God just gives you blessing and strength and clarity and love and patience to just keep speaking. When your book is out and done, let me know. We'll do part 2. And I also want to connect you with a bunch of other podcasters and apologists and, to help get the word out there. So thanks so much for coming on. It's just really, really been a joy.
Absolutely. It's been an honor.
And before you click away, anybody, make sure you hit subscribe. We've got some other shows coming up on Islam and on the reliability of the Bible and a bunch of other stories. And if you thought about studying apologetics, we loved having our certificate or master's program at Biola. We'll see you next time.